Hello and welcome. This is Prashant Seni, Miracle Mindset Coach. And today I have Haritosh Srivastav with me for the secrets of storytelling. I'm sure all of you connect yourself with stories. And let me share that I still remember the time, my childhood days, when my parents used to narrate stories. And like lying and or looking on the stars and moon, we used to listen stories. Then we grew up and those stories changed into comic characters. Then after that, in the young age, again it changed into something different, my own story. Then if I talk about since childhood till now, every moment, every day, we all are living with stories. And when we share our own stories, that becomes more interesting. I still remember that client when I started my journey of coaching and mentoring, and I helped that lady. She got the results, and she said, Prashant, I used to believe in supernatural powers, and I believe in superhumans too, and you're one of them. This became the story of my life because that story gave me a kick, and I decided this is my calling. By helping someone, there was a tremendous change in someone's life. There is so much in the stories. There is so much in stories, and we all know because storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world and to transport you into the another world. It's not magic, but it is only the storytelling that actually transports you in a different world. With all this, let me welcome Haritosh Srivastav in our session. Warm welcome to you, Haritosh Srivastav.
Thank you.
Let
Thank you so
me
much, and
share
hello everyone.
something. Welcome to you. And let me share something about Haritosh before handling the stage to him. Haritosh is a wonderful personality. He is a public speaking coach. He is a certified mentor as well as a passionate storyteller. He is an award winning speaker, having won accolades in India, the US, as well as the UK. He loves to mentor and coach young professionals and students in their endeavors, making their journey better and beautiful. He is the author of Amazon bestseller Small Town Bigger Dreams. This book was launched in 2021 and it's been among the top 5 personal time management bestseller books in Amazon India. He is also an IT professional with 15 plus years of experience and currently he is a project manager. So, warm welcome to you, Haritosh, once again. Let's give a clap and just type
Thank you.
welcome, Haritosh. And Haritosh, stage is all yours now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prashantji. Welcome everyone once again to this amazing session on secrets of storytelling. In the next 45 to 50 minutes, what I'm going to share with you may change your life if you give complete attention. You know, if you have heard this gentleman name who's called, the modern day leadership guru, the modern day idol of so many people, his name is Bill Gates. And this is what Bill Gates had to say about storytelling. So I'm sharing my screen. uh, Sanji, if you could just add it to the screen. And Bill Gates was once asked that, what do you think is a storytelling? And he said, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller, because he sets the vision, he sets the value, he sets the agenda of an entire generation. That is the power of storytelling. And this is what you're going to learn in today's session. So thank you once again for having me. And I hope you are as excited as I am, because this is my most favorite topic. So let me just tell you what exactly are we going to cover in today's session. And if you have not taken pen and paper, I suggest that you stop this video if you are watching it afterwards and get a pen and paper, because there will be a lot of takeaways. There will be a lot of things that you can use in your daily life. So let's just talk about what exactly is storytelling. Now, when you look at the dictionary, you look at different website, look at different blogs, there are so many definitions, there are so many uh, ways people describe storytelling. But this was one of the simplest way that I could found, and that was, it's a narrative. Something happened, sometime real, sometime fictitious, and when you narrate that to your audience, to your family members, to your friends, to your colleagues, that's when it becomes a story. And it's the most trending thing, if I may say, at this point of time. And people think that storytelling is, a very new, a very recent phenomena to say. But is it really? Do you want to know where exactly the storytelling started? Now let me take you to the origin of storytelling. And it is not 10 years, not 20 years, not 100 years, not 1,000 years. It's millions of years back. Our forefathers, they had just started living. Humans had started working on earth, and they had only two major activities to do. One was to survive, which is, they didn't want to be hunted by lions and tigers, so they didn't want to become the breakfast, lunch, or dinner of any of those predators. And the second job they had was to survive, to thrive, to get food for themselves, to get food for their family. And something happened, which was the very first discovery or invention, as we can say, that changed the whole course of human history. And that is, they invented fire. And now what they started doing was, every evening there will be a fireside chat. So in the morning they'll go out, they'll hunt, and in the evening they will light the fire, they will sit around, and from there started the tradition of storytelling. They talked about all the stories. In fact, research has proved that storytelling is as old as 150,000 years old. It is the first language, because only after storytelling, the language, the scriptures, and everything else was developed. So it is the very first language. It is the language that we all understand. If you go and tell a kids, okay, do you want to see a PowerPoint? Do you want to see no graph? Kid may like, what are you doing? But if you tell a kid, I say to my daughter, do you want to hear a story? And I can instantly see that she's excited. She wants to hear the story. And that is the case with pretty much all of us. If you look at any of the religious textures, whether it's Bhagavad Gita, Holy Bible, Quran, Guru Granth Sahib, or any other religions, and doesn't matter which religion you follow, or you are an atheist or anything like that, but if you look at closely, all of these epics have one thing in common, and that is called stories. They use stories to recruit people, they use stories to impact believers. They told stories that what happens when you follow the religion, what happens when you are on the right path. And they also told stories what happens when you do not follow the right path. You look at all the leaders of the world, whether it's the Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, they are not the most strong. They are certainly not the most beautiful or handsome people, but they were certainly some of the most amazing storytellers. And that's how storytelling has carried forward. Let's talk little bit about a different context, which is a business context. I'm pretty sure many of you are probably enjoying the season 2 of Shark Tank, even though there are not few stars over there. Or in the UK, we have something called Dragon's Den, pretty much on the same concept, where we have entrepreneurs who come here, who come there, and pitch their ideas and go on and find funds, find money. And which are the people who get the best one? These are the people who are the best storyteller. I remember, I think I was watching season 1, and there was this device created by these guys from Beats Pilani. And this was about how do you it was a tool for braille language is for the blind people, and they created a tool which will help in their learning process. And instead of telling that, okay, this is the chip we have got from this place, we got the best material, what they did was brilliant. They actually got a blind kid, and the blind kid told the story that how their invention helped him in this corona time to learn, to continue his learning, to explore new things. And it was so good that they not only received the one of the good offers, that kid went on to become a brand ambassador of boat, Aman Gupta. And that kid was actually probably awarded by Prime Minister a couple of months back. And that kid is an example of what can storytelling do for you. I hope you are understanding the context, that how much learning a skill like storytelling can really take you to the next level. So, how I have structured this is, in this whole section, we are going to cover four aspects of storytelling. We are going to cover the what and why of storytelling and what are some of the common issues people have. And then we are also going to talk about how can you find storytelling, how can you find good stories, because one of the common issue people have when I talk to them is that I don't have good story, I don't have enough stories. Then we are going to talk about a little bit about how can you structure your stories, and we are going to end by how can you deliver your story powerfully. Okay. So Prashantji, if you can add the screen share, that would be great. So, what do you think is the purpose of or goal of storytelling? Type in the chat if you are watching it live, or even if you are watching it later. Put it in the chat. Put it in the comment section. What do you think is the purpose or goal of storytelling? Now, if I have to give you the goal, there are four broad categories that I think storytelling helps. Number one is entertainment. Entertainment, right? We all love to get those entertaining stories. We just share it. There's no greater good or anything like that. But the very first thing is you get entertained. So those are entertaining stories. The second one is enlightened. When we hear some stories where there was some struggle, somebody came out, there is some enlightenment, we learn something. Then you have inspirational stories where you get inspired by someone's journey. And the last one is, which I think is the most important, the most crucial purpose of storytelling, that is to drive change. If your stories can drive change, you can say that you have become a captivating storyteller, because ultimately this is, epitome of storytelling, because this is what the great leaders do. They tell great stories that make you change your thought process, that make you change the way you do things, and you become better. And absolutely, healer healer bhaiya has written correct. It does build a connection with your audience. Absolutely. Now, what are some of the challenges people have when it comes to storytelling? So, I'm gonna run through a number of challenges. My stories are not interesting. People don't enjoy my story. I don't find potential stories. I don't have any stories. I don't know how to tell stories which have impact, how to make it short, how to find some good takeaways, how to maintain confidentiality, especially for people who are coaches, who are healers, and things like that. They sometimes find it so tempting that they want to take the name, but they want to keep it confidential. And this is where the tussle happens. And also, let's look at what can storytelling do for you. It can make you memorable, it can help in your career advancement, it can make you stand out from the crowd, it can help you attract more clients, increase revenue, get you more money, and build your credibility. These are just some of these are this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some of the ways storytelling can do. There was a research done by Forbes which said that if you add a story with a stat, people are 22 times more likely to remember that stat or data. So, learning storytelling can really do wonders for you. And I believe everything starts with mindset. Prasanji is a great mindset coach. So I wanted to cover a little bit about what exactly does it take to get into the mindset. What are some of the things that stops you from becoming a captivating storyteller? So what I'm going to do now is dispel some of these myths. These myths are the difference between the 98% versus the 2%. 98% who struggle versus the 2% when they speak. People love to listen. People love to stand in the queue and get connected with them. So what are some of these myths? Number one, a lot of people think that I have to bond with this storytelling skills. You know, there are endless stories where people, when they started, they they were empty chairs, they were talking to walls, but they continued working on it. How do somebody becomes a cricketer or a singer? They'll start playing in the, for example, let's take cricketer. The cricketers will start playing the at home, the gully cricket, and then they will go on and play in the local clubs, then they will play on in the district, and that's how they all keep improving, get feedback, get coaching, and continue with that. Very rarely you'll find somebody who's gifted and who's going to the pinnacle, whether it's cricket, whether it's sports, any sports, or any other thing in life. And the same applies with storytelling as well. The real storytellers are not born, they are made. And you know what? If you are listening or watching this, here is a good news for you. If you ever thought that you can't become a great storyteller, you can be a great storyteller. There is no iota of doubt. If you continue working on your skills, if you continue to practice, if you continue to deliver and get feedback, nobody, nobody can stop you from becoming the great storytellers that you are supposed to be. The second myth people have is it's hard to get good stories. I don't have big connection. I don't have, I have never been to Everest. I'm not amputed. I'm not this. I'm not that. It's very hard to get stories, good stories. I used to think the same until one day my coach, he asked me a simple question which helped me find out a story. So I went to my coach and said, Coach, I think I've been going through all this storytelling program and all those things, but I don't think I have the great stories. And he said, okay, let's do an experiment. And can you think of a time when you thought of something which was like a dream, and now when you think it is like a reality? It actually took me a few minutes to understand and look at my journey and think about it, and then it did click. It was the year 1995. I come from a small town. I studied from a Hindi medium school, and I was in class 5th. It seemed like a usual day, but there was something unusual. We saw there were two foreigners in the school, in a small town called Jaunpur. What are these foreigners doing? And they had those Kodak cameras, and they were going to different rooms and taking pictures. We were intrigued. We didn't know what is happening, what are they doing, why they are taking the pictures. And then we saw one of our teacher, Mr. Gulab Rai. He went there and he had a conversation with them. You would be surprised to know that in this whole school of around 500 to 700 people, including all the kids and staff and support staff and everybody out there, there was only one person who could talk to those foreigners. And through him we got to know that they are doing some research. They've come and see how the vernacular education works and all. Those were not interesting to me as well. But what I was amazed by that is how our teacher was able to communicate confidently with these foreigners. At that time, I thought, how amazing would that be, that if one day I also get a chance, I also am able to confidently communicate with such people. And now it is February 2023. I've been out of India for almost 8 plus years on and off. And every day I'm talking to different nationalities, connecting with them, doing sessions with them, learning from them, teaching them. When I look back at my own journey, it does feel like it was a dream that is now reality. And I'm pretty sure I'm challenging you today. When you go back, when you have 5 minutes, close your eyes and think about this question. What is something that you thought probably it's not possible for you? Probably it was a dream for you, and now you are dreaming that. And that, my friend, would be an amazing story. So, the real truth is that we all have more than enough stories. If we're not getting the stories, it means that we are probably not looking at the right place. We need to start asking the right question. Let's move on to the third myth that people have. That's, yeah, storytelling is only for coaches and trainers and public speakers and YouTubers. I'm an IT guy, or I am just a corporate guy. Why do I need storytelling? Last year, there was this guy who used to work with me few years back, and he got to know that I'm doing this storytelling coaching, and such program. And he said, okay, Haritosh, what you're doing is great. I am an IT entrepreneur. Do you really think storytelling applies to me? So I asked him, Hemant, tell me, you were doing a good job in a big IT company. Why did you leave your job? Why do you have your own venture? And he said, Haritosh, it was always my dream to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to come and have a feeling that when I open the door of my office, I see myself as the founder, as the owner of this company. It was small. We started in a small room, but now when we have this big office, it gives me immense pride, it gives me immense satisfaction. And that was the reason I left my job. I started doing this. So I asked him, Hemant, the next time when you are having a customer presentation, when you are going to hire a new person in your team, or when you are doing a PR campaign, or you are delivering interview, would you not tell this story? And if you tell this story, would you not have any impact? Would you not get more clients, better team members, or more publicity? Of course he will. So the third biggest myth, which separates the 98% from 2%, is that if you want to become great, if you want to become established, you need to learn storytelling. If you found this useful, type useful in the chat. Absolutely. Miller Bhaiya visualized how he overcame his difficult situation. Absolutely. And that those are the kind of stories you need to share with the world. Not because you are great, I am great, or anybody is great. Because your stories needs to be told. And as one of the world champion of public speaking says that no, someone out there needs to hear your story. Someone is there where you were there 5 years, 10 years back, and someone need that story so that they can make advancement in their life, in their career, in whatever they're pursuing. Thank you so much, Glenn. Let's move on to the second part, which is when you understand that yes, storytelling is very important. I need to learn. The second stumbling block that comes is, how do I find stories? It's good that you told that the myth is busted, but how do I actually find stories? So now I'm going to share with you 7 ways to find your stories. 7 ways. And I've tried all of these ways and it does work. So take your pen and paper out if you want to, or write it in the comments. Number one is called reading. And reading what? Reading books, newspaper. You know, it has happened with me so many times that I am in a presentation, I'm doing some talks, I'm having some conversation, and some years back, some months back, some weeks back, I read some story in some book, and at that moment it immediately clicked. It was there in my subconscious mind, but when the opportunity came, it came out. And that happened because I have been going through different books. To this day, I try to read at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour based on the schedule available. Because when you read from different genre and whatever is your favorite genre, it doesn't matter. You can find fiction is all about story, but even in non-fiction, you look at all the great non-fiction. Whether you look at the Atomic Habits, one of my favorite, whether you look at 5 a.m. Club, all of these are filled with stories. And as they say, what you input is what you get as an output. When you input great stories, it's where it will come out. Talking about newspaper, you know, I'm from that era where we used to get one English newspaper once in a week. It used to be called, I think, Sunday Pioneer or something. And on Wednesday, there used to be this Hindi newspaper that we used to get called Dainik Jagran. And on Wednesday, there will be something called Yuva, I think Jagran Yuva or something like that. And there will be stories of people's struggles, people's success. And I remember that I will take scissor and I will cut those newspaper, those articles and put it in my diary, so that whenever I was feeling low, I used to refer to that. I used to see that yes, if this person can be successful, so can I be. I know in Times of India there's something called Speaking Tree, which every day has some sort of stories that they put, some inspirational stories. So when I say newspaper, I'm not talking about the front or the third page or any of those. You look at the sports section, you look at the inspiration section, you will find so many stories that you can use. The third place that you can read is, and this is where it becomes industry specific, is you can go to journals. As an engineer, you can go to IEEE website and you can find their journals. They have monthly or quarterly journals. You can go and search for articles. So you can read any type of book, fiction, non-fiction, biography, storybook. But what matters is you give good input to your brain. You could give good input. You read good stories, because those stories will become very handy when next time you have to present. Let's look at the second way. I hope you are finding it useful. Second way is listening. And listening to, I'm going to talk about a couple of things over here. First one is listening to radio. And it was, I think, in year 2000 to 2004 or 2005, when no, we used to have All India Radio and Vivid Bharati, people from that time, if you remember. And they used to be at 8:30 p.m. every evening. There used to be a specific show about storytelling, about stories, different stories. Sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was emotional, but that used to give a lot of stories. I know a lot of FM stations in the morning time, they have a section for inspirational stories. I think it is the Red FM or something like that, that give a lot of great inspirational story in the morning time. So if you strategize, if you follow, where can you find stories that can really help you? The second place where you can learn, listen to story is audiobooks. I used to be that guy who used to listen to a lot of Bollywood, Hollywood, this, that music. But for last few years, I've stopped listening to music. I mean, I would say I have minimized, if not completely stopped. I've minimized, I've reduced it by 90% or more. And whenever I'm traveling, whenever I have to walk, even for going for grocery shopping, or general morning walk, evening walk, or even traveling in train, bus, or flight, I have my headphone, you can probably see, and I'm listening to either audiobooks or podcast. And those listening are so intriguing that you can find so amazing. So if you want to note down some of the audiobooks that I really love, is one audiobook is called the 5 second rule. If you have ever felt like procrastination, you're not able to take action in your life, you can go and get this audiobook by Mel Robbins called the 5 second rule, and it can change your life, I guarantee that. There's another audiobook called The Secret. We all know the Rhonda Byrne Secret. So Secret is a book and is a documentary, but there is also a secret audiobook, which is again an amazing audiobook to listen to. Similarly, apart from radio and audiobook, you can also listen to podcast. I love podcast, and it's like, if you are following the social media trends, podcasts are the next, or it is almost here, it's everywhere in the world, because People love listening to podcasts because it allows them to listen to something and also do. If you're watching YouTube, you have to give your full attention and watch and listen. But if you're listening to podcasts, it can really help you concentrate as well. So listening to radio, audiobook, podcast can give you a lot of stories. Let's move on to the third. So we went through reading, we went through listening. Third is watching. Watching, very obvious. And I'm going to be little fast over here because I want to make sure that we end this show on time. I like to be on time. You can watch various TV shows and specifically look for the inspirational interviews, look for the business channels where you can find a lot of stories. You can also look at the sports channels for when they are interviewing any sports person. You can find some great stories out there. You can look into YouTube. There are so many amazing YouTube channels which are only story specific. You can go and find out, and you can look at all the great speakers. They all have amazing stories. So if you just start listening to or watching these YouTube channels, you will be having so many amazing stories. Then next comes movies. Some of my favorite movies includes, if we talk about Indian movies, is Three Idiots, great stories. Coach Carter, great stories. So even movies can give you a lot of great stories. And then, of course, the OTT, the Netflix, Amazon Prime. Now this is a rabbit hole, I must say. If you get too much indulge into it, you can be sucked and you may waste a lot of time. But if you choose what you want to watch, it can really help you dig out some amazing goals out there. So the fourth one, so three we have covered. The fourth one is observing, and this is by far my favorite. Because what do you observe? You observe people, circumstances, and places. Around 4 months back or so, we went to London Eye. There's a big London. They have this round robin thing in London, in on the bank of the Thames, and in front of London Eye is a huge building which has all the stories way back from the year 1994 or 5, which is when this idea or concept of London Eye came into picture, and then how it was structured, who were the architect, what were the difficulties faced, and how it was put in on year 2000, and then who all big people have gone through, what all weddings have. And you look at that one wall and you'll be like, wow, so many stories. Now not all will be inspirational, not all will be something that you want to share with everyone, but you can, when you start observing, when you go out there, you go for holiday, you go to meet people, observe. You can find so many stories just by observing people, observing circumstances. If you're going to say Qutub Minar, find out what is the story behind Qutub Minar. Visit, enjoy, cherish, but also try to find out what is the story behind it. And once you start doing, it's like a habit. When you start doing that, you will have hundreds of stories. Let's talk the sixth one, which is research. Pretty specific. When you have to research, you can research on, yeah, internet, Google, chat GPT. You can research in the traditional way, go to library and find out. You can also find out references. And last, and my favorite, and that is interview. So it is the second last, sorry. So if you want to know or learn from the leaders of your industry, if you want to understand what somebody has gone through, just send in cold email and try to get that person for interview. For those of you who are there, if you want to check out, last night we published an interview of a person named Matthew Dix. So if you do not know, Matthew Dix is based out of New York, and he is no Amazon, not Amazon. He's a New York Times bestseller. He's actually, I've got his book and I became his fan. So I got this book called Story Worthy. which is all about how you can, get stories and how you can structure stories. And I found him on LinkedIn, and sent him a cold DM that, okay, I love to interview you. And he was very gracious to accept my invite. And then when I went through the whole process, learned from him the interview, it was so amazing to know so many stories that he has. So if you have not yet checked out, I would highly recommend that you go and check out. Matthew Dix has got an amazing TEDx talk as well, where he talks about he's given homework for life to everyone in the world. So when you interview, the point here is when you find somebody inspirational, when you are learning something, you can actually approach them and interview them. That way, you can get a lot of stories. And the seventh and the last one is reading, listening, watching, observing, researching, interview is collecting your own stories, right? Typically in my workshop or webinars, when people come, I do a small exercise. So you can also do, I ask them to actually look at these pointers, take a few minutes and note down the stories that come into their mind. So first pointer is, think about your biggest failure or and your biggest success. I'm pretty sure there is a story behind that. Think about your first or last or next, or best or worst of any. This is again from Matthew Dick's technique, and it could be anything. It could be about your relationship. It could be about your job. It could be about your interview. It could be about your travel. It could be about your friend. Look at the first, last, best, worst, and you can find so many stories of your own. And then think about the most boring thing you have ever done and the most interesting thing you have done. I bet there is a story there. Think about your own flaws and why do you think these are your flaws? What is the story behind? What do you think is your biggest fear? And why do you think it became your biggest fear? So if you want to take a screenshot, feel free to take screenshot. Or uh, when we do this exercise, I give a prompt, and within few minutes I asked them to list down how many stories you were able to find. Within 2 to 3 minutes, people are able to find anywhere between 2 to 3 to up to 20 stories of their own. Not every story will go and tell to the world, but if you have 20 stories, you can definitely find 2 to 3 inspirational story out of there. And if you do this exercise for a month, you can just imagine how many stories. One of my Kochi, she did this exercise for about 2 to 3 months, and every day she will write down the story that happened to her today, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, or any particular time. And she was able to collect more than 300 stories. Her name is Claire Hardy. You can go and search. And she went on to choose 121 stories out of that and actually wrote a book which became an Amazon bestseller in the UK. So you can actually take this and make it an exercise for you, where every day you are collecting your own stories, and within a few weeks you will have the problem of plenty. You will have so many stories that it will be hard for you to choose which story should I take here and which story should I leave. So that was the second part of this presentation, which is how do you find stories. I hope you noted down the 7 different ways you can find stories. Let's move on to the third stage, which is you understood the importance of storytelling. You know why storytelling is so important. You know how to find stories, and you have collected the stories. Now the next question comes, how do you craft stories? The simple answer to that is, if you use right elements, you can create captivating stories. If you think that all the great stories that you hear, all the great stories that you watch, they're just spontaneous, I'm sorry to say, those are not. They are structured. They have these elements that we are going to discuss. These are specifically 6 elements you can find in any captivating, any engaging stories. Are you ready? Awesome. So the first element is having a hook. The plane is about to take off, and there's a person in the flight, and he receives a phone call and he starts behaving weirdly. uh, he starts to unbuckle, he starts to stand up, and the cabin crews ask him to sit down back, but he doesn't stop, and he pretends that he's having a heart attack. And so much drama goes on that plane actually has to deboard. Plane actually has to come back to the runway. Do you want to know why did he do that? What happened there? Now, those of you who have watched the movie Three Idiot, this is the opening scene where Madhavan does that, and that is the perfect example of a hook. The purpose of a hook in a story is to make your audience curious. It's like the literal meaning of a hook is you put something in water and you put some bait, and all the fishes will start flocking, and you put it out and the fish will come out along with that. So your stories need to have some hook for your audience to stay, for your audience to engage till the end. If your stories don't have a good hook, yeah, if you just start giving backdrop of 20 years, 30 years, nobody has time. And these are some of the examples of hooks. So some types of hook you can use: some captivating title, like minimum 50% increment by learning this one skill. Do you want to know what is that one skill? That's a good hook. The second hook is take them to the action. You open in a scene which is where something big is happening, and the audience has no idea what is happening. This is a great hook. People will be like, okay, what is happening? And I want to know more. And they are there. Another example is give a surprising statement. One of my friend, Kiran Verma, he's on a quest uh, to help nobody die because of shortage of blood by year 2025. And on one day he posted a social media post, and on the top he said, on my way to Shirdi, I met with Sai Baba. I was intrigued. Like I thought Sai Baba is, yeah, we respect him, but I think he's no more. How can he meet Sai Baba, and so on and so forth. And that made me go through the four paragraph of the story that he put in. So you put a surprising statement. There's a good chance that your audience would like to know what is this statement, what why you are saying what you're saying. Asking some rhetorical question. Do you struggle to connect to your audience? Have you ever felt you could do more but you're not able to? Do you feel you're not reaching your potential? These are the rhetorical questions. This is a question which is asked to make an effect, which is asked to no, you know the answer is going to be yes from the audience, but your audience feels connected. He's like talking to me. Another hook is having some shocking facts or statistics, like as they say, like no, up to 90% people have some or other fear of public speaking. That's a shocking fact. What do you do? Another hook is having great quotation. Great minds talk about ideas, average about events, small about people. Eleanor Roosevelt. So these are some of the examples, some of the ways you can have a hook into your story. If your stories don't have hook, your audience is not going to connect. They are not going to stay back. They're not going to watch your videos or listen to your stories. The second element, which is very very example and very very important, and that is called characters. Your stories need to have one or more characters. For example, Arthur Ashe. I'm not sure how many of you know about Mr. Arthur Ashe. He was one of the greatest American professional tennis player of his time. He had won he has won 3 Grand Slam titles by 1983. And in 1983 he had to undergo a surgery. And because those time there were not lot of checks and lot of uh, hygiene was there, he was transfused with a contaminated blood, and as a result he got HIV, or as we know, AIDS. And this news spread like wildfire, and he started receiving, people were so sad, people were so angry, and they were sending him mails. Those were not the time of email, so he was getting lot of hundreds and thousands of email every single day. And he was getting weak, he was feeble, he was not replying to any of those mails, until one day he received a mail from a young guy. And when he received this mail, he couldn't stop from replying. So the letter had said, why did God have to select you for such a bad disease? Why did it happen to you? You are such a nice guy, you have done so much. Why did God choose to have this such a bad thing happen to you? When Arthur Ashe read this letter and wrote down the reply, it was such a deep reply that eventually it was imprinted in the Wimbledon court for the generations to refer. And he said, my dear friend, in the world, over 50 million people want to play tennis. Out of that, only 5 lakh people ever get a chance to hold a racket. Out of that, only 50,000 people get a chance to play. Out of that, only 5,000 play at a professional level. Out of those, only 50 reach a grand slam like Wimbledon. Out of that, only 4 go to semi-final, only 2 go to finale, and only one person lifts the cup. When I was lifting the cup, I didn't ask God, why me? And now when I'm in pain, what right do I have to ask the God, why me? Now, this was a small story which has got only 2 characters, if you notice clearly. There's one, this young fan, and this Arthur Ashe. And the point here is, for your stories to be effective, for your stories to leave an impact on your audience, you don't need to have a number of characters. You actually have to have only 1 to 2 characters to make an impact. And if your characters are relatable, if your characters are something that your audience identify with, your job is well done. The third element, so far we have covered 2 elements. First one was, yes, you need to have a hook. Number 2 was characters, and number 3 is emotions. Your stories need to have a cocktail or mocktail of emotions. Unless you have ups and downs, highs and lows, happiness and sadness, unless until you have those emotions, your stories will not be impactful. I'm gonna probably skip over some of these things because we need to respect the timing. But the basic emotions are happiness, surprise, anger, fear, disgust, and sadness. And for your stories to be effective, you need to have at least 2 of these emotions. The next element is conflict. There has to have some problem, something. It doesn't have to be the big problem, but there has to have some problem. As they say, if there is no conflict, your stories are not worth listening. right? I remember in my school time or in my childhood there used to be this two liners, ek tha raja ek thi rani dono mar gaye khatam kahani. There was a king, there was a queen, both died, end of the story. That was actually not a story. How many of you relate to that? So your stories, if you want it to be a story which people remember for years to come, it has to have a conflict, and there are different types of conflict. Very quickly, there are external conflicts, like conflict between characters, conflict between a character and society, conflict between human and technology, nature, supernatural. And the most important, here is the secret: the best stories are the one where there is more of inner conflict versus the external conflict. So inner conflict, like your beliefs, your habits, your inner struggles, these are, yeah, people will remember it forever. The next element that you need to have is the resolution. If only conflict is there and there's no resolution, people will be left with high and dry. So if you are having conflict, you also need to have resolution, where your main conflict is resolved, your climax is achieved, and this is the official end of the story. Now you may be thinking by now that I've covered all the elements, but this, the last element, is the most crucial element, and that is called your message. The best radio station, as they say, is the YFM, and if you don't know the full form, it's called What's in It For Me. If you are on these stories, they are asking this question. Okay, great. Prashanji is telling a great story. Haritosh is telling great story. But what do I learn? What do I know? What do I get? So when you're telling a stories, your stories need to have a takeaway message so that your audience can take something away with them, can apply something in their life. And I'm not talking about the entertaining stories. I'm talking about the story which have impact, which drives change, which inspires people. There has to have some takeaway message for your audience. So here is the elements, six elements: hook, characters, emotions, conflict, resolution, and takeaway message. I know we are at the top of the hour, so I'm gonna quickly go through the fourth and the final part, which is how do you deliver your stories, how do you wow your audience. The first thing that you need to do is you need to move, you need to stage your presence, you need to plan your presence. You can't be just a stiff and standing person, you can't be a pendulum as well, moving from left to right. You need to stage your stage, you need to plan that how do you actually move. When you're moving with a purpose, you're not a pendulum, and you're not like a tree that you're just standing at one place. So you always move with a purpose. That's the first one, and it does apply to whenever there's a virtual stage. You need to come close to camera, go back, and use the all the sides of the screen as much as possible. The second is connect through your eyes. Having an eye contact with an audience is very very important, because your eyes are window to your soul. And if you can connect to your audience, how many of you feel that I'm talking to you right now because I'm looking to camera and visualizing you on the other side of this camera? And whether it's the virtual world or whether it's a physical setup, you have to have eye connect with your audience to have that impact. The third is having pauses. You know, great speakers are not those speakers who always speak, who speak fast or slow. They are the one who bring vocal variation, who knows the power the pause can bring. There are different places you want to take pauses. I'm gonna move on in the interest of time, but whenever you are collecting thoughts, when you are asking a question to your audience, whenever you are having a key message or you're having a humorous punch, these are the places you must take a pause. The fourth one is about body language. The two aspect of body language that you need to work upon is, one is having an open body language where you seem confident, you are connecting to your audience in such a way that they feel that you are the powerful speaker, you know what you're talking about. So that is one is open body language, and the second one is functional gestures. When you say I was talking on phone, you are having the right gesture which shows that you are talking on phone, and all of it has to be congruent. And the last but not the least, the fifth part is something called you focused question, which is your audience is asking this question of what is in it for me. And if you keep having this word called you is called a magical word. When I say I was great, I was this, I was that, you may not be interested. But when I say you are going to learn something, you are going to get something, you are going to apply this and become amazing speaker. Every time I say the word research has proved there is brain movement. You get attention. So whenever you're speaking, always remember this question, what's in it for me? And the answer to this is start using you more than the I or we. Yourself more than I, me, we. And that's all on how you can wow your audience. At this point of time, before I return the control back to our great host, Prasanji, I have a message for you. You know, all of us have a journey, all of us have a story, and the world needs storyteller like you. Don't worry about that people will criticize, people will, what will people think? You have a story, you have a power. Please use it. Tell your story to the world. You may never know, you may not know what impact it can have on someone's life. Thank you so much, everyone. It was an honor and privilege. And I want to hand it back to our great, amazing host, Prasanji, over to that. Thank you so much.
Awesome, 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 wonderful. Thank you so much, Haritosh. You've given really great insights about storytelling. So I urge every one of you, whatever you have learned, give at least 3 points so that we know that yes, actually you are connected to Haritosh. You were actually listening, and what exactly did you find? What's in it for you? So also Haritosh, I got some questions here.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so I'll just ask. Might be some of the audience might feel hesitant to ask, so they
Please.
might connect with that. So
Absolutely.
the first is, where exactly can we add stories?
That's a great question. I'm gonna give a counter question to that. Where can you not? Jokes apart, it doesn't matter whether you are having a boardroom meeting or you're doing a presentation. If you notice, I try to add as many stories I could remember as much. You're just having a conversation with person. Anytime you are having conversation with people, if you notice clearly, when we are talking to others, we are actually telling a lot of stories subconsciously. So there is this like not one set place that you can use storytelling, but to give you answer to that, you can use stories when you are delivering a presentation, when you're having a sales pitch, when you're trying to inspire your audience, whenever you're talking to young kids, when you are talking to people from different background. The I had some of the amazing conversation where both of us are from a completely different background, and then we'll tell stories of our own background, where I come from, what I do. So yeah, pretty much everywhere that you can talk about. Yeah, at sometimes you have to be more articulate, but if it is not a formal presentation, you can be little informal as well.
Okay, that's great. Also, there was another question like, is it only for coaches and trainers? But you've answered that. Like everyone can add stories, and I remember that even when we are with friends, when we are in office, when we are chilling out, we always talk about our stories. Something good
Absolutely.
happened with me. Something good happened yesterday. Something weird happened yesterday. So
Yeah.
what
Do
is
you know
that?
what happened?
That's the story.
And boom, a story is there.
And there is a story. And
Correct.
also when we are, sometimes we are sitting alone and we are thinking about our past.
Mm,
We say these are memories. But when you share with someone, what do you think?
it's a
Isn't
story.
that a memory or a story?
Correct.
Right? One more question here. Like during this storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
what should we avoid? Like
Mm,
negative use of words or
yeah.
something else?
Yeah. So what should we avoid? That's a altogether separate topic in itself. But especially when you're doing a professional presentation, or you are a coach, you're trying to do, one of the things that you should always know beforehand is what is not allowed. I'll give you an example. There is this big speaking organization. I don't want to name any organization. And there was this lady president of the organization, and they had a conference in South Africa. The lady president went there, and guess what? She told stories, but she told stories about slaves. She told stories about racism, and that went became such a big uproar that when she came back, she actually had to give her resignation. What wrong she did? She did tell stories, and it was good, but she chose the wrong place to tell the story. So always remember that. No, and another thing that a lot of speakers have to be careful about is never ever, never ever ever mock your audience. You are there to serve, so don't tell a story just you want to make fun of your audience. Don't do that, you're doing a disservice. So those are couple of things that I'm going to say on the top of my mind, but it this in itself is a big topic. What not to do when you are professionally speaking or doing a presentation. What are the things that you should avoid? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that is why we say that choose your story at like when to share that story and where to share that story.
Correct. Correct.
Think about the environment,
Absolutely.
like people around you. Are they the right audience
There's a
to
right
share
audience.
that one?
Exactly. Exactly.
Also, what should be the purpose? Is it like always giving a message, or
Mm.
could be something else?
Correct. So I talked about the four clear purpose. If you look at my slide when I was sharing,
Yeah.
one is entertainment, pure entertainment. There is no takeaways. Is you're having a fun with your friends or your colleagues. That's one. Second is when you want to inspire next generation, you want to teach or something like that. That's where inspiration, or you are when you go and attend those satsangs or preachings and all, you get enlightened. So that's another place where you see a lot of stories. And the fourth one is where you want to drive change. And when I say drive change, it is a larger term, but it could mean when you want to get more business, when you want to get more, say, subscriber on YouTube, you want to get more connections, you want to do more networking. Anytime you want to change a certain situation or conditions, that's where you can use storytelling. So it can have uh, broadly, these are the four categories. Inside that there could be multiple categories, so it depends on what is the context. As they say, context is everything. As you were saying that, no, you need to have the right stories at the right time in front of the right audience. That's where it will be the, no, hitting the nail.
Okay. And 300 stories, Clear Hardy. Do share the name of the book so that
Sure, sure,
people
sure. Yeah,
can,
it's called, I think,
can.
one to one only. It's called one to one stories. If you search in Amazon, you can find that. I'm not sure whether it's available internationally, but it is certainly available in the UK. It's, I think,
Okay.
Kindle only. So yeah, Claire Hardy, one to one. She has, I think, yeah, more than 300 stories. And you know what? I was having this interview of Matthew Dix, and which I released yesterday, and I told him, because I learned this technique from him, and I told him that, no, because of you she was able to get. And he said, yeah, great, I'm not surprised. And that is the power when you start collecting stories. Yeah, it's not surprising to see people having 100, 200, 300 thousands of stories. Because if you look at your day to day, I mean, what the conversation that we are having, it can actually become a story where we are
Yeah.
having this conversation. You learned, or I learned something, or the audience who are watching this, that in itself is a story. And every day we're having multiple stories. The only thing that we're not doing is collecting those stories. If you start collecting story on daily basis, pretty much you can get 200, 300 stories within couple of months. That's It's not a big thing.
Okay. One more thing, like, is it actually possible to engage your audience to keep them interested or engaging throughout the story?
Remember why FM. If you remember that and
Question is
plan
for
your
me.
story in such a way, definitely you can engage.
What I also believe, like, if it's your real life story and you're
Hmm.
sharing, like, most of the time when I have session, so I share my own story. Like, I had a
Yeah,
fear of speaking English,
correct.
and even just because of that, I had a time where I had to decide, okay, like, let's commit suicide,
Wow.
and it was just a mindset.
Mm.
So I was able to overcome that, and like,
That's such a powerful story if you look at it. I mean, I love the point that you brought up, because definitely when you share your personal stories, there is more authenticity. And because you
yes,
are sometimes you are able to relive the stories, because when I was talking the story about those foreigners coming to my school and all, I am actually sort of going back to that time, visualizing things what happened there and things like that. So when we tell personal stories, the emotions come naturally out. We don't have to do, because if you had so much of pain or trouble, it will eventually show in your, then you don't have to do no specifically vocal variation or body language change. It will, if you are reliving your stories, it will automatically show. Worse is if you're telling someone else story, you have to sometime plan those, you have to get into those no, nitty gritty, and that's where the difference will come. So definitely the first choice, as you said, is personal story, because those are more authentic, more genuine, and people connect more. But yeah, there are times when you don't find any relevant stories. At
yeah,
that time you can take other stories as well.
yeah. So, like, to inspire others, like, if one person can do something, then why not you,
Absolutely, absolutely.
right? And just last question. Um, According to you, like, if I
Hmm.
say one most important element of a good story,
Hmm.
what should it be?
That's a tough one because I just talked about six elements. It's like picking between them, but definitely I think just like I'll take a vague example. If you make the best YouTube video and great editing, everything else, but if your title and thumbnail are not good enough, people are not going to watch that video. If I take that to storytelling context, if your hook is not good enough, even if you have the perfect story, people will not listen to your story or watch your story. So I think the most important element of the storytelling, of course all the elements are important, but the first and the most important element is having the right hook. When people get connected to you, then yes,
Yeah.
you need to have other elements as well to take them through, but that is the first and the probably the biggest element that you have. And that is why
We,
companies or and web series, you see the hook is amazing when you, and for the audience who are watching this or will watch that, now when you go back and look at any web series, any YouTube videos or any TV shows, think about how did they open the scene, what was it, and you'll find that they have some amazing, because they have the best of the directors, best of the story writers, and they specifically work on how best I can have the opening scene so that my audience is completely engaged.
yes. Thank you so much for all this. And I know here are some healers also, some coaches and some trainers. So
Awesome.
I'm sure you all use like Healer Bhaiya and Glenny.
Hmm.
Both are, good, even I would say, great healers.
More power
So
to both of you. Yeah.
use your story, use
Mhm.
your story, even others' stories,
Correct.
to share with your clients so that they get inspired to move
Mhm.
on, to actually, take
Absolutely.
action into their life.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, you do not know how many people you are impacting at that moment. because world
Totally.
needs more people
Most
like you, like us. With this, I end this session. If you really like this session, just give more power to Haritosh and just type more power to you, Haritosh.
More power to you as well, Prashant. And for anyone who's watching this, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I can tell you I've seen a few videos. Prashant ji, make sure that he's bringing some amazing speakers, some amazing trainers. So if you subscribe to this channel, you're gonna get a lot of value addition. So if you have not yet done so, please go ahead and subscribe and click on that bell notification.
Thank you. Thank you so much once again, everyone.
Thank
Would
you.
appreciate if you share your learnings. What have you learned? At least 2 3 points, so that we know that you were actually here. You were listening to us, and we feel honored to you. So thank you once again, Haritosh Srivastav, and everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you next week with a new topic and a new speaker. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Awesome.
time. Bye bye.
Have a good time. Take care. Bye.